following is intended to provoke thought and challenge our assumptions. The opinions we hold are subject to change based on new and valid information. Your discretion is advised. Dude, by the way, Janet is awesome. It was so good to hang out with her and get to know her better.
Oh, did you guys go climbing?
Yeah, we went climbing at Eagle Peak on Saturday.
Oh, shoot, she's...
Did I not tell you about it?
Mm-mm.
We did Soy Chango.
No way.
Yeah, on-sited it.
I can't believe you got her to go on Soy Chango.
Yeah.
I think she's done it before.
She said she'd done it once before, and I checked in with her. She said she'd be willing to follow it.
Yeah.
But not willing to lead it. And I was like, I want to lead this thing.
Well, you have to.
I have to,
You're
right?
gonna do rap in?
Yeah, no.
Rap in instead of top rope?
Right, no. And I was like, well, because, maybe she wants to lead it, and you have this, kind of who gets to lead it. And if she wanted to lead it, I would have been like, well, we'll both lead it. You climb it, come back down.
Yeah.
And then I'll lead it.
Oh, she's really feeling it after, yeah?
No, she didn't want to lead it.
Yeah.
She just wanted to follow. But I on-sighted it.
Hell yeah.
Dude,
How were the moves?
It was exhilarating.
What is that, 11? What is that,
11C.
11C, that's
overhung.
Yeah.
And
Reachy, right?
Reachy, big moves. They're all jugs. They're all super positive.
Uh-huh.
But you have to keep good body position.
Yeah. Because
you're just going to tire out. Because this thing is just overhung. And I remember looking at it and I was like, fuck, that doesn't look like the pictures.
How big? How big is the roof actually?
It's not so much a roof as it is just a constant. It's just constant climbing. I would say
it's like one of those gym, like the leady wall at Mesa Rim.
It's like a prow.
Wow.
And I would say it was probably 20 feet of sustained V3 moves.
Oh.
So there's powerful moves.
Yeah.
And so then there's
desperate, right? You have to make the powerful move and then boulder. It's bouldery, right?
That's it. Yeah. And I'm like, this is what I'm training for, right?
That's sick.
And there's this one section that you get to rest on after you pull through the most powerful section, and then there's this weird sort of stemmy. There's like a stemmy move, and then you have these big blocks for an undercling, and it's just more technical at the very last segment, but it still required a throw. And I remember when I just threw for it, at that point I was so tired because I'd just given everything I had to
get you this 20-foot burly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just not. I haven't been training for endurance.
Well, yeah, it's
right?
like a 20-foot sustained boulder problem.
Yeah, and
on overhanging terrain, so it's not like you can stop and lean into a slab.
Exactly, and we hiked in. Right.
Early.
We already hiked in. We walked. You're already tired. You're carrying a heavy pack.
Oh yeah.
And then
it's not the worst approach though.
No, it's not. But you're still burning calories.
No, for sure.
And all I had that morning was avocado toast.
Well, then if you're psyched on it, or if you're a little bit nervous about what you're getting into, that whole walk, I swear that the stress, it builds that cortisol and gives you those bubbly guts.
Yes.
And so you're getting ready to go, and you're I don't know if I should start the climb or if I should go down the hill and find a bush first.
Right. Yes. I had performance anxiety.
Yeah,
that's what the night before I had performance anxiety.
Oh, did you get sleep? It used to happen to me every time. I used to barely be able to sleep.
No, I could sleep, but it was just a constant thought, and then
especially if you know that you're the only one that might be solid at that grade.
Exactly.
And you're like, man,
it's kind of on me.
If I lose this, I'm losing $40 in carabiners.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're gonna have to bail.
Which is more about pride than the money, but still, you're just dang.
I refuse. I think I bought 3 quick links, and I was like, I don't ever want to use all 3.
Oh yeah.
To bail on.
Would you just bail? Would just use one, right?
Yeah, I just use one.
Yeah. Those things are bomber.
Assuming it's a direct line from bailing, right?
I mean, I have rings.
Yeah.
I have rings in my big chalk bag.
Yeah, you gotta be prepared.
Yeah.
And I would say that second section, I have footage of it, but I tried using a GoPro on my chest to see if that would give interesting perspective. Trash. It was trash.
Should see. I have some YouTube videos up, and I'll show. I can link them to you. And they're solos, but what it is, it's just if you really want it, you got to get the head thing, and you put it on your head, and you kind of direct it a little bit down.
I have it on my head, but I used it on my chest this time to try it.
Okay, yeah. The one that I saw, the only problem with having it on your head, I did it at Talkeets. and I kept looking up, and the sun was just blasting.
Oh.
And so it would like blast the lens, and then the lens would kind of be like a little bit. It seemed weird.
Yeah.
But it turned out pretty good.
Luckily, the sun was behind us the whole time. But that last...
In winter.
Yeah, in winter.
Summer.
You climbed to Eagle Peak in the summer?
No, I've climbed to El Cajon Mountain in the summer, and it's just brutal hot.
That's terrible.
But you leave at like 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like crank out there and just get like blast up.
Still,
cruiser.
You better not have... Yeah, it better be cruiser, because if you get stuck, you're fucked. You don't have enough water.
Yeah.
Like, how do you carry enough water to survive?
Where you just like do, it's like you have your climbing Nalgene that do you do that? Do you take an Nalgene?
I saw Janet do that.
Yeah.
She clearly taught me some lessons on packing light on a multi-pitch. I had a pack that was probably 20 pounds.
Yeah, especially there. Well, did you guys leave your packs at that?
But then I had a smaller pack.
Yeah.
That had a Camelback. It had I don't even know what else, but it was clearly full. And she offered to take it, and I was like, "Thank you," because if I had taken it up that route, I would have totally bombed the on-site attempt.
That's why I stopped taking packs when I started doing like big trad routes, like in Yosemite, because all of a sudden you're in some squeeze chimney, and it's like I'll never forget climbing my first chimney. It was like a 5.7 chimney, but with the pack on, it was just. Or like I've like been in like corners, like they're like dihedrals, but they have like an overhead, like a lip over them, and like trying to climb these corner dihedrals that are really slick with the pack and like making the move, and then all of a sudden it's like, ugh, like
I'm stuck.
Oh my shell! I felt like a turtle.
Yeah.
But no, it's sick, man. Congrats. That's a proud line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was super proud, and honestly, I can't even recall all the specific moves. I was so in the zone.
That's climbing. Like when people ask me, they're like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know.
I
don't remember a thing about it. I just remember it was really cool. I remember just being like on fire, just being like, yes, like this is the meaning of life."
That's right. That's right.
Like, I don't know a single move though.
That's right. It's literally the epitome of being in the flow state, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not conscious about what you're doing. You're just executing action.
That's what trips me out on some of these route descriptions. I'm like, who are you? Like, move 3 meters to your left and reach 4.5 feet to a really bad mono. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, and then there's these really terrible edges, like dime edges for your feet. Your left is above your right. I'm like, who are you? Like,
how do you remember?
Yeah, like, how did you even enjoy the climb, you robot?
Dude, I think at some points it like maybe if you did a route that just bored you, you'd have to be like either bored or just like primed to analyze what you're doing. Because I think if you're there to just experience it, it is hard to remember everything. Like I remember small pieces of the climb, like there was one point where my feet cut and I almost fell. Yeah. Just like, it was just random. And I held on. They just blew out and I was like, shit. And I held on. I was like, fuck, that could have sent the onside attempt gone. But that was a brief moment where I snapped into reality. Yeah. Then come back. And then
it's cool on a multi-pitch too, because it's different. Like when your feet cut or things go down on a multi-pitch, you rise to the occasion. You know, you have like 200 feet of ground underneath you. Like it always seems like there's some sick wind like going through your hair. You're just like you feel so badass. Yeah. Especially on 5-10 plus territory. You're just like I'm on a magazine cover.
Yeah, like I am. And I what I love about the whole sport, and this is what I tell people, because at my work, you know, nobody does this. I work in a field that's very risk averse. Insurance is a risk averse, like we try to risk manage, and a lot of people are risk averse. And so doing stuff like this to other people are like, this is extremely risky behavior.
Oh yeah.
And I say, like, look, the benefit is I get to go on Eagle Peak, and there is a portion of rock that I as a human get to touch that only a handful of people in the history of humankind ever have touched.
Well, then the terrain that you're climbing is just unbelievable. You couldn't do it without the mechanical advantage of engineering. No. You know, it's just unbelievable because the risk is.
Can you imagine being those guys back in the day who, like, they were the first chargers? They put ropes around their waists.
Well, dude, there's this route on Corte Madera that's like a pretty burly route, and like in like it's 10A. 10A, a lot of squeeze chimney, kind of off-withy move. It's burly climbing. It's old school burly climbing. It's like First ascent. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was just like, oh yeah, this dude first ascended this thing on site on solo, and you're like, no rope, no nothing, in mountain boots.
Yeah,
it's like,
boots.
okay, like we're talking about like a god.
Yes, you're talking about somebody who had serious. I mean, the confidence must have been so supreme because.
Or the fitness, yeah.
The fitness, the confidence, and it's a different type of fitness too because now we have strength and conditioning. That wasn't a thing, in the 40s and 50s where people thought of like, oh, I'm working these technical types of movements,
Yeah, I think you also don't. One of the other things I think a lot of people don't consider is that like there wasn't really a huge like back when some of the like Royal Robbins, Yvon Chouinard, like a lot of these guys like there wasn't a pop culture.
No.
Surrounding climbing, it wasn't status quo. Like it was just like this weird counterculture thing, and like so the people who got into it, you just have to think like we're actually purely driven.
Yeah.
For climbing, like these people were just like from the beginning of their lives, were just like they were the kids that like climbed to the top of the
right.
They're like climbing
Naturally.
the slide,
yeah.
They climbed everything their whole lives, and like so you have to imagine like some of these guys had to have been just naturally gifted.
And I like that whole counterculture thing because as I've been seeing more of the history because you get involved with something, you like to learn about the history, you become an enthusiast, is that there's still this element, and it's becoming less so from what I can tell, and I'm not that deep in my career as a climber. I'm still under 5 years.
Yeah.
But there's like this certain type of personality that seems to be drawn to climbing, and that is the person who's never quite been the mainstream person. Like they've got an edge to them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I don't mean edge as in like an asshole or they're a jerk or anything. I mean an edge like there's a dark side. There's like this sort of beast within that they're just like constantly working to tame.
Oh yeah.
And I get the impression you kind of come from that. Like
yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's weird. Like I don't know. Like I just have to get out and get mileage. It's so weird because I'm gauging where I'm at my climbing now versus where I was at my climbing in the past. And now it's so weird because you want to talk about like risk aversion. I'm just like I think and now I'm like my head's in it. Back in the day, like I was just like hard man. Like yes, like let's just do this. I'm like this is terrifying. Like I'm gonna do this. Yeah. And like you just burrow through it. And then I think people who don't have that, they stay at 5'7". Those are the people that are bombarding the parks. Red Rock. Yosemite, Joshua Tree, and that's why like those people are like, oh yeah, I've climbed Cat in the Hat 40 times, and you're like, interesting.
What is that, Cat in the Hat?
It's like this classic, like maybe like 4 or 5 pitch 5. It's like one of the most popular
low hanging fruit.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, but you could like up solo. You could up solo and down.
Yeah.
So it's just like. Yeah.
You said you had done 55 solos in a day at Joshua Tree or something.
Yeah, I did 55 in a day at Joshua Tree, and then I did a huge day in Red Rock too.
Just solos.
Yeah, well, it was one solo. So what I did was there's a climb called Johnny Vegas. So there's a solar pit. It's called Solar Slab. So the Solar Slab doesn't start until like I want to say it's like three probably like 500 feet up is this next tier. So like you climb up. There's a variety of ways to get up there, but you climb up like 3 or 4 pitches just to get to this tier, and then you get to Solar Slab, and it's like I think it's huge, dude. It's like it's like 7 or it's a big day. Like it ends up being like a 10-11 pitch day.
Jeez, and you do that by yourself?
Yeah, just like because I was like, oh, this is chill, and so like I was climbing so hard. And so I soloed up this climb called Johnny Vegas, like past people, like their classic solo, like, hey, mind if I climb through?
Yeah.
They're like hanging on a wire. They're like, yeah, dude, go for it.
Please.
Like step on them. And
excuse me, peasant. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Noob.
Yeah.
And I climbed up there, and then I was like, I had like an iPod. I didn't have a phone with me. I didn't have anything with me. I just had like a hat. And an iPod and like wire headphones. And like I went out onto the Solar Slab and I was like, well, this must be the slab. And it's like this huge like thing. Well, what I didn't realize is that the slab cuts over and it like climbs like this corner system. Like it links up all the easy things. Well, I ventured out onto like just this blank wall.
Oh shit.
But it was slab. It was like, but I found out later it's like 5'9".
You didn't intend to do that.
No, but I didn't know. I thought I climbed Solar Slab, and so I got to the top, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, like, I don't know how to get off. And so I was like, well, let's just see how this goes. And so like I found the easiest route. I was like, oh, I found this like cool little system of features. So I just started down climbing all these features. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I made it over to this corner and like I made it like back down, and then I found the gully, like down climbed the gully, which is, you know, it's like a 5.5 gully or 5.3. Like got back, went back and looked at the guidebook, and I was like, oh, I didn't even actually climb Solar Slab. I down climbed Solar Slab. Like I like up climbed. It was called like Sunburn or some other like weird route.
That's sketchy as hell, dude. Because I think that's, you know, part of a super big danger of being a solo enthusiast is that if you get off route, shit can go from 0 to 1,000 real fast.
Yeah, it can't. Well, and that's one of the things that's like if you're climbing. So if you're climbing like 5'11", you can down climb 5'9".
Okay.
And so it's like if you're not choosing routes at your limit, that's like the big thing about those guys in Yosemite, like John Backer, Alex Honnold. Like these guys are climbing into into terrain that you can't reverse. You can't reverse moves on the freerider.
Yeah.
You know, or even on the Sentinel. Like these things, like or you know, the Moonlight Buttress. Like these guys are climbing things. It's like you have to know. One, you just have to know exact route. But like one of the cool things about like John Backer was an on-site soloist. And he was so gifted that he could look at the line and he could just be like, I can do that. And he could spot a line that wasn't even a route. And he could just be like, oh yeah, like he could see it. And like he could go up into it. And then like Peter Croft did that kind of stuff, like out in the Canadian Rockies, like mountains. He was like he had like a story where he was like climbing up like on solo in the Rockies. He'd been dropped off with a helicopter.
What?
I think he was in mountain boots.
Dude.
And he's climbing like, so he was like, oh, it was just a 5'8" dishy slab, but it was pouring rain, and I was in mountain boots. And he was like, said at one point he had to like use his knee because his mountain boots wouldn't stick. So he pulled the slab move, like he found a dish and put his knee in it. It's a crazy story.
There's got to be such a confidence in your own balance, and that's just insane.
Well, you talk about that flow state. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I love one of my favorite responses when I tell someone asks, it's like, oh, you rock climb. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so you do like, and they hand motion like this. And I'm like, I guess that's what I do. It's just like, it's just, yeah.
That's it.
And then the next question is obviously, oh, have you seen Free Solo? I'm like, what's that? You know, like, no, of course I haven't seen. Yeah, of course I've seen Free Solo,
yeah, right.
But it's so, I think.
If you've seen Free Solo, I think I've seen Free Solo.
I think I've seen it. Yeah. So how did you get into climbing, and then I'm not really clear on where you went from your past, which we can get into, and how you transition that into climbing.
It's cool. I mean, because it's like halfway.
Okay.
So like from where I'm at today, like where I got into climbing is halfway from how I got into. It's just like a perfect halfway. Like it was like the decade. I'm at like a little over a decade.
Of climbing, and then it was a decade before.
Oh no, I'm at like a decade since my experience.
Oh.
And then it was like probably like 5 years later. I think I've probably been climbing like 5-6 years.
Okay.
And
dude, you went hard then in 5 or 6 years.
Oh, it went immediate. It was so fast and so intense. So I just like worked super hard when I got my life together. And that was all I did. And I body surfed a lot. And then I kind of like jumped from relationship to relationship. And I kind of know what I was really running from. But
you didn't know, or do you?
I don't really. I haven't really analyzed. I used to like think about it a lot. Now I'm just like, I guess I just wanted to change the way that I felt. You know, it was better to be with somebody than to like sit there alone with that icky feeling. But yeah, so like I was like kind of like a serial relationship, had a horrible experience, and pretty much like everybody involved in that experience was immediately attached to my life. And so what happened was that like, I don't think I really did anything dirtbaggy. It was probably a little bit like tactless, but it like destroyed my social life, my whole social circle, and everything that I'd been kind of building for like 5 years. All of a sudden, like I was like this villain in my own life, and like I had a few friends who still supported me.
When you transitioned to climbing?
Well, this is why I transitioned to climbing.
Oh, okay.
It was just like I had a relationship. It went to a dead end, and then we went on like a break for like 2 months. And then like she never talked to me again. I tried to reach out to her, and she's like, "Oh, I still need time. I still need time." Well, in that time, I had started hanging out with this other chick, And like we were hanging out, and then things started getting a little bit crazy. And so I was like, wait a minute, like I just need to nip this in the bud now. So I broke up with my girlfriend who I hadn't really talked to in like 2 months. And then went with this other girl. Well, the other girl was a little bit crazy. And she was like, oh, I want you to walk into this. It was a meeting. You know, I want you to walk into this recovery meeting that your ex-girlfriend goes to hand in hand, like this declaration. And I was like, nah. So that girl like went off. And so she went and just like blew my life up in this really weird way. And so
like, what do you mean? And like, she blew your life up. Like,
Yeah,
she contacts your mom. She's like, Josh is a piece of shit. And
No, I wish.
Then she call your uncle and be like, Josh is a piece of shit.
I wish, dude. I wish she would have done that. No, what she did, because like the program of like AA and NA, like they're so drama. There's so much drama. And so like there's a lot of gossip and there's a lot of just drama, you know, like.
So you'd been building building relationships in NA and AA for like 5 years.
Yeah, like extreme. Like if you could think about like extreme. Like I was the president of the San Diego Lano Club. You know, like I managed treasuries for like, you know, and that's not like a huge deal, but like
you were involved,
very involved. Yeah. And like there's the sponsee system, you know, like I had sponsees, so like I mentored like hundreds of people.
Wow.
You know, I worked through the steps. Like I was just like captain. I was like captain A. I had a cape on.
Dude.
And that was my whole life. Like I just went to AA meetings. You know, like I went to work. Yeah, like I spat a really good game. Like I memorized the Bible or the big book, you know, whatever. Like I just was on it. I was Captain Recovery. And she went in and she just slandered me so bad. And it might not have been as bad as I thought. I was like 20, I think I was like 25. And so the blow was a lot more. Now if it would have happened, I would just laugh about it. I was like, whatever. You know, but at 25, I was just like, oh.
Your identity's wrapped up.
How can I ever show my face again? And it's like these people are like, look at this cheating dirtbag playing all these women, like this 13-stepper. And I was just like, no. Like,
what does that mean, 13-stepper? So it's like one more extra step outside the 12 steps?
The next step is hooking up with chicks. Like you just go to meetings and you pick up on the low-hanging fruit, right? Like people who have like little amounts of time who are really vulnerable, and you're like, oh hey pretty lady.
That's
like,
called a 13th
yeah, it's called a 13th step, and you're
wow.
like, hey pretty lady, you look like you need someone who has a little bit of experience in the program.
That's got to be a huge vulnerable thing for people too. So that's got to be a big problem.
That's why it's called the 13th step. Yeah, it's a thing.
Wow.
But
I didn't know that.
Yes. And so everything tanked. Like my you know, the relationship I'd been in was really good, and so she was like my best friend, and so like best friend gone. Like a crucial part of my social circle, like where I spent my time, I felt like I couldn't show my face there anymore. So like my pride got really hit like super hard. And so now all of a sudden I'm like in this identity crisis, and I was just like, what am I gonna do? Like, oh. And so like I didn't have my girlfriend around, I didn't really have a lot of my friends around, I didn't have a lot of things to do with my time. And so I was like, well, I've always wanted to go climbing. And somehow, like, I looked up this, like, introduction to climbing course, because I've been talking about going rope climbing for a long time, and REI had this course. And so I was like, well, fuck it. You know, like, I don't got anything else to do. Like, I might as well just do this. And it just kind of, like, kickstarted, like, this reinvention, you know, of, like, stop being so scared of what happened. What it was, like, for 5 years, I was terrified of what happened 5 years prior, getting busted and getting in all this trouble. And I think I just lived my entire life just trying to avoid risk, trying to avoid doing anything that looked like it could possibly threaten what I had built or what I had. And so now that like that got destroyed, I was like, I'm gonna do this.
Nothing's permanent.
Now I know. I'm glad I didn't tell myself that then though.
Yeah.
But
how do you think you would have reacted if you had told you back then, hey man, nothing's permanent?
I probably would have just been like, oh, this is like some metaphysical Easter, you know, so I don't know what I would have thought. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Some
like
Buddhist bullshit.
Not if you're me.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not me. Like,
yeah.
It's different for me.
All right. That's that young mentality too.
Yeah. And but yeah, so that was how I started. I started like an REI climb club, and yeah, that's how I did that.
Dude, so there's a pattern then in your life. It's all gas, no brake.
Yeah.
Whether that's AA, climbing,
work.
Work.
Yeah.
So and
that's what I said. I have no stop.
No stop.
I don't have a stop. I just go.
Has that been changing as you've been getting older?
Yeah, I mean, in
Or is
like the last year, like today, like everything fell through, and like I was like, I'm gonna stay home all day. I'm just gonna like kick back. I watched like Netflix. I was just like chilling, and like I'd never do that because what happens is I'll sit down and I'll start guilt tripping myself. Like, you have to get, like, you can't just like lay here and do nothing. But what I found is when I do lay there and do nothing, because I'm like, you're gonna get fat, you're gonna get out of shape. What I find is like when I stop and like take a full day off and just like do nothing, just relax, like drink water, eat good food, and like hang out. Like the next day, I'm like, whoa, like I feel way better. Like I look better. Like I was like, it's like 6 months of like delayed like healing.
What do you think that comes from? What do you think that because I think you and I immediately relate on that level. There's this sort of just intense grind and desire, and I find myself I'm harder on myself than anybody else. And one of the things about me at work is that I will be hard on other people because I know I'm going to be harder on myself. And I expect more from other people because I expect more from myself. That can sometimes translate in a negative way if it comes across, right? Some people are like, fuck you, why are you breathing down my neck? And it's like, this is so important. It's like, it's really not that important. But like, where do you think that drive, that angst, because it's got to come from like this place of like tightness, right? And
I mean, for me, I think, and I've done a lot of work on this actually. So I think for me, a lot of it just stemmed from insecurity from like my younger, like my early childhood, like my developmental years, like in elementary school and intermediate school. Like I just grew up in like I guess like Hamul, when I first grew up in Hamul, it was just like kind of like a Billy town.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, where is Hamul?
It's just like rural San Diego. It's like rural San Diego.
Yeah. It's literally 30 miles from San Diego.
It's 30 miles from San Diego. There's nothing there. It's just, you have like 2-lane roads and no stoplights. And no street lights.
And
no trash. Like there's no, like, you don't have like the municipality. You're on wells.
Yeah.
You know, no underground utility. Like they don't have cable. Like they still don't have cable. At least my family. Like they're like, they don't have like AT&T. Like they don't have fiber. They don't have high-speed internet.
Right.
You know, like they're using like satellite dishes. So it's a bit different.
What do you tell people when people are like, hey, where are you from? What do you say San Diego? Do you say Hamul?
Typically, I tell people San Diego because I've been living down in San Diego actually about the same amount of time, like 15 years and 15 years. But if I get to know people, I always bring up Hamul because it is different.
It's we're in San Diego.
Yeah.
But for people who have lived in San Diego their whole lives, some of them have never been to Hamul. Yeah, and it's literally outside, and it's tons of stuff to do there.
It's beautiful.
Outdoors stuff.
Dude, Hamul is like, I'm telling you, at like twilight, like like as the sun is starting to set, like in like spring, summer, and October, is probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Especially the valley that I grew up in. It's like, you like expect like fairies or something to start flying. It's just magic.
Yeah.
Oh, just gorgeous. Yeah.
And it's San Diego weather.
Yeah, and then what you have is you have like that natural growing sage. You have natural growing like herbs and plants, and like the smell of Hamul, like the smell of it is just, it was great.
It's one of the few places where there's just like fall happens there.
Fall does happen there, yeah.
And people think, oh, it's like I'm in San Diego, it's just palm trees. It's like, bruh, 30 miles that way.
Yeah.
And so you grew up in Hamul. What is a kid growing up in Hamul in the 80s, 90s? What does that scene look like, and what do you have to be concerned about?
Oh man, I mean, as a little kid, like there was definitely, because my grandparents moved out there, my mom and my uncle, they moved out there in the 60s, and growing up, like it was like a real, like the homeland security threat of coyotes and illegal aliens, and also at the time, there was like escaped convicts coming from Mexico, and so growing up, like there was always like this weird stigma that like, and there was like this place, we had 7 acres, and so there was like this little like nook like behind all these bushes, and there was like all these old cans, like canned food and like an old baby doll, like really creepy stuff. But what it was remnants from like, migrants that were just like camped out, like trying to get across. And so like growing up, I always had the stigma, and I always, not the stigma, but I always knew, my family had always told me about the illegal aliens, like tons of illegal aliens, they'd come out, coming up through Tecate. And so that was always kind of weird. And it just, in a weird cultural sort of way, like it really showed you, like if you think that the San Ysidro border is like anything like it, it's not. It's just different, like because out there there's no, there was no fence, there was no border walls, like, and so you had this very real sense of like this crime, with like the biker gangs, like the drug smuggling, and there was like a lot going on out there, a lot of border patrol presence. There was not a lot of cars. It exploded in the 2000s. Exploded after, like, especially like after 9/11. The type of people that were moving out there were totally different. When I was little, it was white trash. Like I was white trash, and I always identified as white trash.
What would you define as white trash? So it's just like, what does that mean?
Poor, common, think what a lot of people would think about Middle America, right? Like Appalachia almost, like, you just like good old boys, like driving around in the old Ford pickup, drinking beers with their shotguns.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what it was like, like people on three-wheelers, like people like going out on their three-wheelers drunk in the middle of the night, like breaking their necks. It's just like, what the fuck is going on here?
Just bored. There's sometimes nothing to do, and
kids like like when people would like around like high school age, like most kids would end up like there was like a baseball field like between the baseball fields like between the intermediate and the elementary school, and like a lot of like you just go down and like smoke pot or drink, a lot of them.
When did the casino show up?
Oh, the casino just showed up like 5 years ago, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the casino's pretty new.
Yeah,
maybe it's been more than 5 years, but it's pretty new. It was a big deal.
I wonder if
that was actually a thing as I was growing up. There was a huge backlash against that. That thing got delayed for like a decade. Yeah,
I mean, I can imagine why.
I don't think any of us, like where I'm from, like the people that I grew up with, like nobody cared. They were like, whatever, like, do they give out free drinks? But what happened was like when the money started moving in, the money started moving to this place called Proctor Valley, and they started building like these nice custom homes. People who, at the time they were the yuppies. Now they're, they're not. Now they're like, I guess like our parents, But like when they weren't, when we were young, they were the young and upcoming generation that was kind of taking up some of these positions, and having kind of exponential growth and quality of life. And so, yeah, they built like these amazing homes, like with these big swimming pools, and all of us were just like, what? So then we're intermixed. Now we're like kind of like getting mixed up with these kids. And I think that's where, like I mentioned the insecurity before, I think that's where a lot of that insecurity started to come from, because I was an only child from a single mother, and we lived with my grandparents. And so it's like, that's white trash. That was like my idea of white trash. It's like I don't know my father. I probably never will know my father. Then all of a sudden you have like these people who are starting to push up into that millionaire stage. They have like infinity pools, saltwater pools, like 3 children. All of them have like brand new motorcycles, and like these kids are wearing like these kids had nice things. Like, and then my mom did great. My family did great. Like I had nice things. But I didn't have the nice things like they did. Like they had nice things like where it's like, for me, like nice things about, oh, I have a new pair of Levi's.
Yeah.
And like whatever these people had.
I got an ATV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what we were. And so where I was at, in the valley that I was in, like none of those people moved into that valley. So what life looked like to us was like let's steal Coronas out of our parents' fridge and like let's go ride our BMX bikes around in the middle of the night in like some field. And so that's what we did. Like we just ran amok in this valley for years, and it was like all of us were kind of, I'm not going to say my home was broken. Around 11, my mom had relapsed on out because she had quit drinking when she found out she was pregnant with me, quit doing drugs, and so when she had started drinking again, she kind of just vanished. She went from super mom to like not there.
At 11 years old?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so then there was a bunch of us right around the same time that you were coming from like a broken home, and so we like, and this is like the motif of my life, like from that moment for like the next 15 years, or yeah, probably next 15, even as it carried over into recovery, really the next 10 of those years was like finding groups of broken people from broken homes and banding together and like forming our own little culture. And so we just like, none of us had any, nobody was like, who's watching these kids? Nobody. Nobody was watching us, you know? Like my friend Sheila was like 12 years old, raising 3 children.
Whoa.
You know, and like, that's like crazy. And then like the adults would just be like getting trashed in the front yard, or, you know, on like a meth bender. You know, it was just crazy, you know? A lot of alcoholism. In the adult population, yeah.
So I think that's what you're kind of illuminating with like white trash. It's not just socioeconomics. Just not just money. It's not just where you live. It's almost like a lifestyle.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
Yeah, it's a way of life. And it's, you know, and if you follow like any impoverished place, like I see the same thing in the hood. Mm-hmm. And the only difference is that like whether it was when I used to live in Logan, it's like maybe it's a Mexican neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was like in Skyline, like I live kind of like, I'm not quite in Skyline, but I'm still in the hood. It's, you know, and then that's just black poverty. And the difference is the police presence for sure. You know, one thing about Hummel that's interesting is there's no police department. It's the sheriffs. Like the sheriffs aren't out there. So like if we had been in the hood, like been black kids running around, like we probably would have been in and out of juvie all the time.
Do you think that's also to do with proximity to urban centers? Because Hamul doesn't have an urban center. There's not an accumulation of wealth just sitting, you know, 2 miles away versus, you know, someplace like Skyline or where, you know, you go west enough for a few miles and now you're in downtown.
There's just more. I think it's just like, one thing is accessibility. Like once you're in the city, once you're in the inner city, like you can get to various part of the inner city very easy.
Like that, yeah.
Well, yeah, if you need to hop on a bus or like you skateboard, like you can make it, especially if you're a kid with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And like the people like in downtown, like when we were kids, like crack was still there. And so like we would run into crackheads. It was crazy. Like it was wild.
In Hamul?
No, in downtown.
Oh, okay.
Like if we so in Hamul, like you'd see tweakers, you'd see people, but there wasn't really any hangouts. Like groups of people who grew up together and like people who knew each other from like just being natives. Like yeah, they got together and they were like they drank and they partied. But like in the cities, it's a lot different. Like the cities, like people are just out, like getting into trouble, and like there's just so much to do.
So like 11-year-old you who's seeing 12-year-olds raising babies, what's going through your head at that time? Like, how do you make sense of that? Because did you understand why your mom left?
I didn't. I didn't have a clue what had happened, and I was struggling, with like all sorts of insecurities, like body dysmorphia, like but regular, like just a weird thing, you know. I think that I had a lot of insecurity about not having the dad around. It had been thrown in my face. It's like, oh, you're just a bastard or blah blah blah, or, you know. And so like I always felt like I was less than, especially when it came with these newer people that were moving in with the money. I felt like I was less than them, and I think a lot of us kind of felt that way. You know, and I think that the whole system kind of assisted in that.
What do you mean the system?
The education system, the local, you know, whether it was Little League or whether it was at school, it just seemed very apparent that the kids with money, see what would happen is that like if a teacher punished a kid with money or if something would happen, then their parents would be down there and in their face. And so what the teachers did, like the teachers feared the parents with the money. They were like, dude, like, we're not going to mess with these people. Like they have a lot that they bring to our community. Like this person just donated $10,000 to redo all of the Little League fields. Like we can't mess with him. And so like you have this kid who's like, oh, he's bored, but he's like out on the blacktop, like punching girls in the face because they beat him at a game of what was that game? The one where you throw the ball around the pole?
Tetherball.
Tetherball, yeah, you know? Like so you had like some really crazy, weird entitlement things.
Wait, that happened?
That happened, yeah. That actually, you know, it's funny that person that I'm talking about was like my sports rival because I was like extremely good at baseball. I was supposed to go to like LSU. I was supposed to be a pro. That was the plan. And so that was also what my
You got the
childhood was.
build, man. You got
know.
the height. You got the huge calves.
That was from I was a catcher. Yeah, I was a catcher and a third baseman.
Strong power base. You know.
Yeah. Oh no, that was also my life. So it was like in the day it was baseball and sports, and then as I started getting into my adolescence, you know, like my mom had been closet smoking for I don't know how long.
What's that mean? Just like
No one knew that she smoked.
Oh.
She smoked on the down low.
cigarettes?
Yeah, cigarettes.
Okay.
And so like I remember like I would smell it, and I remember like that was how I smoked my first cigarette. Like she would like throw them in like these paper towels and put them in the fireplace. You know, I remember like going in there and like unraveling one of them. And like I knew nothing about cigarettes. And like I went into her car because she had like a, you know, when they had the ash, the lighter, the cigarette lighter. Like lit the cigarette lighter, and I remember freaking out because the smell. I was like, oh my god, I'm busted. Like they're gonna know. Like I just didn't know that. Like nah, like you smoke a cigarette and like no one's gonna smell anything in like 30 minutes.
Yeah. How old were you when you smoked that?
I was probably about 11. Like everything started to really snowball around like 11.
And that's when your mom left.
That was my mom. Yeah, that was my mom. Like,
Dang.
yeah, she went and started drinking again.
Did you ever talk to her about where she went and what?
Yeah. Well, me and my mom ended up drinking together, partying together a little bit.
At 11?
No, probably around like 14, 15.
Wow.
Like really like 15 or 16, I'd say. Because I think what her idea was like, oh, well, if he's doing it with me,
Yeah.
then he's not going to be out getting in
That's
trouble.
a common.
Yeah.
That's still young, man. 15 years old, 14 years old.
Oh, yeah, but it had already been going on. So the drinking started like almost immediately.
Wow.
And I guess just older friends, you know, it's like going, like, so when it happened, for going from 5th grade and into 6th grade. And I met these two kids that were older. Like one of them was like 15 and the other one was like 17. And so like I'm like this little dude, like running around with like these kids were quite a bit older. And so I was exposed to a lot more.
Hell
and
yeah.
then, yeah, it was crazy.
How does that work, dude? Because like at 5th grade, my main concern was Pokemon cards. And then
I was selling them. I was slanging Pokemon cards.
That too. And then at 17, I couldn't imagine wanting to hang out with an 11-year-old.
Yeah, well, that's where you start talking about people with some issues. You know, like that guy had problems. You know, just
Makes sense.
People dealing with abuse. You know, people dealing with like insecurities, and so that's kind of like that. Like that's one of the things that I think comes with poverty, is that you have like people who are in a bad situation, adults who are in a bad situation, who feel trapped, and so they're coping with it however they do. And a lot of times a lot of times that's drugs, that's alcohol, and then with drugs and alcohol comes like domestic issues. You know, whether it's abuse, emotional abuse.
Then before you know it,
Or neglect.
Your kid is hanging out with 11-year-olds because there's some weird like ability to connect with somebody who is that much developmentally younger than you. It's just,
and he was notorious, dude. That guy in particular, like he was a good. I mean, he was just a broken person. I don't know if I'd say he was a good person because his actions.
yeah.
He just couldn't be considered a good person, but he was just a damaged person, you know, and unfortunately, I don't know if it was like Arrested Development, you know, but yeah, he was just like suicidal. He was a mess,
Dude.
but
And this is just one character of many.
that was just one. It was bad. Like my buddy David, like his mom would get home off work. She worked for the post office, and she would get home from work, and she would be like, we'd be over there hanging out. She'd be like, make me my drink. So she taught us, she drank White Russians, and she had those tumbler cups, those huge cups, you know. And so she would teach us is like pretty much pour like half a gallon. It was like almost a fifth, like in this huge tumbler cup. Just she would up in the bottle of vodka, and it would just fill up like 3/4 full, and then she would dump like another fifth of that glass full of Kahlua, and then she would just like put like a drop of milk in it.
Oh, yeah.
And then she'd go out on her riding lawnmower. I swear to you, they had like 5 acres, and she would just go out on her riding lawnmower and just drive around all day, all night, in the dark, all the time, and she would just be drinking out of this thing.
You can't make that up.
I'm telling you the truth, dude.
Every single day.
Every day. And like they were such a drunk mess. I remember like her and his dad was just like this beeraholic. And so I remember one time his dad was like, come on out, boys. Like, I'm going to teach you guys how to put down a horse. Because like their horse had like its intestines got twisted.
Whoa.
And so there was like, they couldn't afford to get it fixed. So he was like, we're going to put down this horse. He's all drunk. And he shoots the horse in the head. And he missed its brain.
Oh my
And so this horse just takes off, and it's just like, it's squirting blood everywhere. Like, and yeah, I remember it so well because he had this brand new work truck, you know, like some brand new bucket truck, you know, and like the horse just like went over, like sprayed blood it was just, that's what I mean. That's white trash. Like, it was like, that's it right there. It's just chaos, man.
I can't. So, okay. Same family. That's the husband to the woman who drinks White Russians.
That's just that family. And that's where we hung out. That was the place.
Dude, so much crazy shit.
Yeah.
So he takes you out to this horse, and it's just standing there. And
he grabs, you know, he has a bridle on it or whatever, and he's like holding it, and like there's a way to shoot a horse in the head.
And it bled out, I'm assuming.
So
that's awful, dude. That's horrible.
I don't know what happened. That didn't get resolved while we were around. Like, we just ended up leaving. We were just like, it was upsetting. Like, we just split.
Yeah,
we just like went off into the valley.
How old were you? Dude, if you say 11, man, that was a pivotal year.
I think I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
Whatever 7th grade is.
Yeah,
I'm sure it must have been 7th by then.
Like, maybe, what is 7th grade?
I ran around with that crew from like, well, we ended up losing David, and then it was me, and by that time, like,
David's the son of these parents.
Yeah, and he was the middle guy, so I would have been like, if I was like 13 or something, he would have been like 15, and Corey, like Corey was like 4 years older than David, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a bit older, but
You lost to David? What do you mean?
he just got into like music and punk rock, and
Okay.
he just kind of just changed groups.
Okay.
Me and Corey stuck together, and he was 21 before I graduated high school.
Corey was the one who was older.
Yeah, he's older. Like, I know this, that I remember at one point, like, I think Sheila was 13, and I think Corey was old enough to buy alcohol. But I can't be sure. He was either like 18 or he was 21, and he was dating Sheila.
Jeez.
And like, everyone was just like, well, it's the homie. It's not. Well, to us, we're kids.
Yeah.
So we grew up with him, so we weren't thinking, you know, it just didn't exist really. It wasn't like in, no one
I could
told us.
understand how if you're within the same group, how you're not looking at it through that lens of like, hey, you're 21.
When you're young, you're like, you can't really, you're like, oh, well, yeah, just
your ability to just analyze that kind of stuff is just, it's not on the same same scale. Yeah.
Not at all. But it was wild, man. It was anarchy. That was it. Like, it was just total anarchy.
You were like latchkey kids.
Yeah, we just did. It was like that movie in New York, that movie Kids. Like, there was nobody watching.
Wow.
And there was no law enforcement. There was nobody. And so from 11 to 16, I was in this valley, and I lived on, like, you know, my grandparents are around, but like my grandparents, like, they weren't equipped to deal with like some, like, you know, who would have guessed really? Like, if anybody could have known that, like, they would have had this raging out, like adolescent, like, drug abusing, belligerent child. Like, I don't know. I don't think anybody knew. I think that happened with our generation. Like, that whole generation for the millennials. I just don't think anybody saw it coming.
No.
And then when that epidemic hit, when the opioid epidemic hit, I think, and it hit in like suburbia.
Yep.
I think it just took everybody, and they were just like, what happened? It's like, well, you haven't been watching your kids.
Yeah.
You know, it's like been like over a decade you've been letting the kids run amok. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
You know, like,
people were working, families started. I think
there was the real estate bubble. You know, like 9/11 happened. It was crazy, but yeah, we were just.
So then, how did that, like, so 11-year-old you shit like really changed, and then people, I think, who are privileged enough to know that, privileged enough to not know what addiction is like, or what that culture is like, don't understand that it is not I smoked meth once and now I'm in this it's like, no, there are many preceding steps. There are many small, tiny steps that you aren't aware, especially when you're young and you can't think, like, what am I working towards? There's so many small steps that lead you to that moment, and then by the time you become aware of how chaotic everything is, the amount of effort that it takes to work out of that is like, you can't even process that, because so much shit around you is crazy. When do you think it started to like ramp up into this like serious lifestyle of chaos and drug addiction and
Oh man, ninth grade.
Ninth grade.
By ninth grade, yeah, ninth grade, full blown.
So from 11
Full
to
blown
ninth grade.
addiction for sure. At the time. And
your brain's not even done developing.
No, not at all. So I think one of the things that hit really bad, and so being collegiate, grades started to be an issue. Attendance in school started being an issue, and so like when you start talking about the criteria of addiction, what you're talking, like the inability to quit using drugs despite adverse consequences, and so like drugs were starting to affect alcohol, drugs, loop them together. I was using alcohol. It was the first drug I found. As I moved on, alcohol was just alcohol. Like alcohol just kind of got there. There was a time where alcohol was really bad when I was using, like addictively, because I would drink alcohol and then I'd get belligerent, and then I would be like, oh, I know how to solve this, because like I knew if I was belligerent, I got in trouble, so I would just smoke meth, and then I'd get super spun. I'd be like, oh, this needs to stop, and then and this was the cycle I ended up at. Was like meth. Oh shoot, like I need to come down. Heroin, and then like, where would it go from there? How long would that, and eventually that just never stopped.
So okay, so like slow that down for me. So you're too drunk. So in order to come out of the drunk, you smoke meth.
Yes.
How do you even connect those two?
As far as
like, where do you come up with the idea of like, in order to transition because essentially you're just doing like really severe transitions of your state.
Yes.
How do you? I mean, obviously you had tried meth before independently or something like that. So how do you start a cycle of drinking to meth to heroin? How many times did you repeat that? And I don't know. It's just mind blowing.
I mean, so eventually, the end goal is I became a full-blown heroin addict. A full-blown heroin addict. But for a long time, so what happened was by the time I was 16, a lot of party drugs, a lot of ecstasy, right? So like this is through high school. Tons and tons of ecstasy. A good amount of meth, playing around with meth, but not really playing around with meth addictively. But partying out with meth.
How do you party with meth?
You just get high, and it's just like you'll just be like just tweaking for like a day or two. Whereas like addictive meth use is like you're talking about going on like week benders. I mean, you might have portions of sleep. The use is much different. Like partying with meth, like you're having fun. Tweaking with meth, like as an addict, like you're like a creature. Like it's weird.
What do you mean, a creature?
Like every time you get high, you're like. You have like the notepad out, and you're like just tweaking, and drawing, and like 12 hours go by, and all of a sudden like you stop drawing, and like you have like a cigarette that went out like 8 hours ago, like still in your hand, and like you have like this creation of like picture over picture over picture over picture, and you're like, what the like, but when you're tweaking, you're like, oh, I can see what I'm doing. But it's just chaos. And it's like, and then all of a sudden you've been crouched over like this for like 7 hours, all hunched up, and it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, my hand doesn't work anymore. You're just fucking like, it's out of control. Like out there taking apart TV, you're just tweaking, like what you'd expect, like what you'd see on Cops. Like, what's this guy doing?
And at the time when you're in that state, there's to think rationally is not. That's not something where you're like, oh, I'm taking apart this TV because I'm trying to understand it. But really, if you back out of it, it's like you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're just thinking. You're just doing.
You'll catch what would happen. It's like I think that your mind is spinning so fast. Like you'll know. Like you'll be like stop, stop. Like what are you doing? Like you need to stop. And like trying to break it, and then it's just like the compulsion to go back to that thing. Whoa. It's just like meth is really weird.
Sounds really weird.
It's pretty weird.
I've never done meth.
And that was like in the weird. That was like weird. That's like after hours though. It's like what does a tweaker do at night? Think about you don't see them out there. Like where are all these meth addicts? Like they're not like running the streets. Like you do have the people on meth who are like doing crime and stuff. But like a lot of people are just like like they're tweaking out, like having like tons amounts of sex, you know, tons amount like of unsafe sex, and that's one of the reasons that like, you know, like in the gay community, like it's a huge problem when it comes to HIV and when it comes to like unhealthy sex practices, is that meth and sex go hand in hand.
Why? Just because you're up, your energy.
You're just tweaking, and that's what people do. That's what they're good at it. Like it makes it so that like you last longer, you feel better, you just feel like you're just like on fire.
Wow.
You're just on fire. Like think about like your most wakeful state times like 20.
Jeez.
And that's like a meth high. Like you're just like you're gone.
Yeah, man, you are blowing my mind on this meth thing. I've only had one other conversation with someone who's used meth. It was a former neighbor of mine.
Yeah.
In Salt Lake City. But we didn't go into that much depth. Like the way you describe it and being like, you're a creature. It's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
That's insane.
I can tell you a lot about it too. I mean, if you're interested in it. Just talk about like you just lose perspective on what you're doing. You're just like going so fast that you don't even really know what you're doing. Like just tons of crazy ideas, and it's just like everything's kind of a blur.
Whoa.
You know?
And that was 9th grade that you started experimenting with meth and ecstasy. And
I'd say like it all started pretty fast. Like by sophomore year, like I was really, really, really into drugs.
And paint a picture for me, your high school. So you're part of a clique, I imagine, at high school who also does drugs. You probably hang out with people who also do drugs at school. Were there people that looked at you that were like, that's the drug group and I'm not part of it? Or was there a lot of people at your school that was like, no, this is everybody?
I don't know.
How big was your high school, I guess? I mean, that's a...
It was decent size. I mean, I went to Steel Canyon until sophomore year. And then it was pretty good. I mean, it was like people from El Cajon went there, people from Humboldt went there, people from Spring Valley went there. Yeah, it's a good size. Yeah, it was really diverse, and that was what was also interesting is for the first time, because once you added Spring Valley, you know, when I grew up in Humboldt, there was one black family, a lot of Mexican families, but there wasn't a whole lot of people, and so when I got to Steel Canyon, like you started getting like the introduction to like gang culture, you know, like actual neighborhood gangs from like Spring Valley. You know, because back then it was ghetto. Like San Diego was still ghetto.
Yeah.
San Diego wasn't I mean, it's different now. Like gangs were a thing. Like hard drugs were on the street. You know, gangs were prevalent. It was a thing. Like growing up, like we knew like who the Kenwood Bloods were. Like we knew a lot of stuff like that. And so you did have groups. I don't know if I think for the most part though, a lot of people would just kind of considered us like kind of punk rock like white kids. And I don't know if anybody had really realized, like you had people who pretended to be all, I guess you'd like be like woke or whatever, like, oh, like, I smoke bud. And then you had the people who really did.
Hard drugs.
Yeah. And like, so what happened is we just stopped going to school. We just ditched. Like we'd go to school, we'd all meet up, like we'd hang out for a little bit. And like we'd all like get together, and then like by lunch, like we all just dipped. And because there was like this road and it went down to the strip mall. And so we called it Rancho. And that's where we went. Like we just hung out at this strip mall. And that was pretty much like, that was my high school, was at this strip mall. Literally. Sitting at a bench in a parking lot at a strip mall.
Smoking meth.
No. I mean, I wish. Yeah. At least I know it was like, name it.
Yeah.
You name it. That was what was so bad about it. It was like you name it. Like whatever drug you get your hands on. You know, you're just like.
Where'd you get the money for this?
I stole bottles.
What do you mean?
I stole bottles of liquor from the store. I had a bottle business. Me and my buddy created a business selling liquor. And so we would go down and, you know, if I sell, you know, get like 2 handles a day, you know, we get orders from school, you know, like we had a network of friends and we were all just delinquents. And like, who's expecting like this little not 7th grader at that time, you know, who's expecting a 9th grader? They just didn't see it coming. It was perfect. Nobody saw it coming. But then, you know, when I started messing around with meth, that's when things started to change. Like I remember there was like one of those can places, you know, you like take and recycle your cans, and it had like the auto entry ones. And so like we went there at night, and I had this friend who was super, super skinny. And so we took him, and there was a little gap, you know, like like a 6 to 8 inch gap, and we squeezed my buddy in there. And they have these huge pink bags filled with cans, and he would cut them open. We line up shopping carts, and he would just rob them for all of their cans. And we took them, and we had them all stashed, and there was like a max, and so you'd go in the middle of the night when no one was there, and you just scan them on both machines until they maxed out, and you get your little receipt, and then you'd have like $40-$80.
Whoa, you guys had a good scam.
Yeah, and so that would work. Once meth got involved, crime, and then I started hanging out with like gang members, and then real crime, real crime. Yeah, like the bottles and cans were stupid.
So yeah, I mean that's like chump change.
Yeah.
How did you? So you were in baseball. How did you party and then play baseball? Like what? How do you do that?
Well, in 9th grade, I started to feel, because in 8th grade, I really ramped it up. Like everything was fun. Like everything was like in 6th grade, it all kind of started, or like going into 6th grade, started drinking, started kind of having a little bit of fun. 7th grade, and it wasn't like a huge thing. 8th grade, and then the summer going into 9th grade, like everything went off the rails. Always partying, always drinking. Like that summer was just crazy. And so when I went into baseball, or I think I tried it out for football, I went to go play football and I did something. And they were like, oh yeah, you guys need to run like 6 laps around the track. It was like 1.5 miles. And I remember for the first time ever, I'd always been a good runner. I'd always been fit. And I remember just being like getting this horrible, horrible stitch in my side. Like horrible. And I was like, what's going on with me? I was so out of shape. And I couldn't really, I just didn't know that was the alcohol and the cigarettes and
everything.
Yeah.
And the stitch on your side, you mean like just pain?
When you're just like, it's like you get them when you're running. You know what I'm talking about? That just like that pain right there in your, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was horrible. I'd get them so bad. I'd never really experienced them before. And so I was like, that was all I really noticed. And then my grades suffered. And so.
Significantly.
Pretty significantly. But what, the big thing that happened with the baseball was, so we're talking about my rival, my buddy, which he's cool, spoiled guy. But his parents, this is the truth. We tried out, and I was like on fire. I was really, really good. Not toot my horn. That's just what I did. Like that was all that they had me do, was train for baseball all the time. And this kid's family donated, I think like $15,000 to $20,000 to Steel Canyon to redo their fields. They really and they put him on varsity. And I went on to JV. And I fucking flew off the handles. It was over. Like I quit. Like that moment, I quit life. Like life stopped.
Dang.
I just stopped. I quit going to school. I was just done. It was it.
How did you have to get your? Oh, that's right. You got your GED.
I got my GED.
Yeah, because you dropped out of school. Pretty much. Yeah. So then, how did the gang thing come up? And what kind of gangs? And I mean,
man, like so. We were running around in Rancho. My mom would drop me off at this like computer cafe, and like I met, there was just like a bunch of knuckleheads. So there was this kid named, I guess I could say his name. He's dead now. His name was Travis. He ended up being Creeper, but yeah, he's just like this kind of like a scrapper. He's just tough. He was a bully. He was mean. Like he jacked people. Like beat up people and take their stuff. And so me and him became really cool. And so then, like from Rancho, I started being affiliated with different cultures. It just wasn't like my white kid friends that I grew up with. And then all of us kind of came together, and I don't know how it happened. I know there was a guy named Chano, and I think he's doing life. And I know he had serious real Southside gang affiliations. Mm-hmm. And so through him, all these little knuckleheads that wanted to be gang members, they actually met real gang members, and then they in turn became gang members. And so then I was just like this down dude, because me and my mom ended up moving down to Rancho when I was, I think, 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. And so around 15 or 16, like my mom was at work all the time, and she wasn't really coming home because she was drinking. So I had like this flop house, and so like I was, at that point, I got kicked out of Steel Canyon. I was at Valhalla. And so I would go to school in the morning. I think she dropped me off. I can't remember. I'd go to school in the morning, and then pretty much just like turn around and walk back home. And then just like And that was it.
And then bring gang members over.
Whoever, anybody, everybody knew like where they could come. So everyone would hit me up, and when they did, like they were like, "Hey, I'm with so and so, and we have a bottle. You mind if we come over?" I'm like, "Come on by."
Yeah.
Or so and so, "Hey, you mind if me and Jeremy come over? Like we got an eighth of bud." I'm like, "Come on by."
Yeah.
You know, someone would call me like, "Hey, man, I need a place to roll. I'll get you a pill. Are you cool if me and my girl come over and roll at your pad?" I'm like, "Come on through."
Damn.
And that was it.
I mean, I think a lot of people also don't realize, like, this happened to me too, in not to the extent that you had it. And I think part of being insulated in Utah and being in a small town, part of the benefits of that is that we got insulated from some serious crime.
Yeah.
And so the hardcore drug use and the hardcore kind of like crime type of networks were significantly less serious than they would be if we were in downtown LA. Right. In Hamul, where there's like real gang members just walking around, not just like prowling around, but like, you know where the spots are at.
Yeah.
And then
or especially the inner cities. The inner cities are bad.
And you know, people like to say small world. It's a small world in the business community and stuff. Dude, it's a small world in the drug community.
Oh yeah.
After a while, you start knowing who the names are, and if you're in a small town, you start doing that. But the crazy thing is that if you really start committing to that lifestyle where you're inundating yourself, and that's who you hang out with. I remember meeting people who I started meeting people who were affiliated with the cartel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you start, and not high level. You're not talking about like.
But the drugs got to get there somehow.
Exactly. Right. You just meet. I met this one guy. It was after a rave, and we went to this after party, and I must have been like, I think I was like 17 in Salt Lake City. I was in Salt Lake City, but I lived in Logan, so I was like sneaking out or something like that. And he was telling me he was on his 4th heart attack, and he was like 20, and it was from all the cocaine that he did. So he would just rail cocaine. He had such a problem, and that the cartel essentially like didn't want to do business with him anymore because he just kept like just being too strung out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm lucky that they didn't kill me. He told me some crazy stories, and it's just like you start meeting these people who are into some serious shit, and you start meeting more of them.
Oh yeah.
As you get more involved, you start meeting more gang members. You start meeting people who pack heat because they have to. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I remember the first time I ever had to carry a gun.
Yeah, it's like, why?
I was in Mexico with 18th Street. You know, rolling around with gang members. Big time street dealers down there.
What did you tell yourself when you were in that? Like, were you like, hell yeah, I'm tough? Like, what do you tell yourself?
Fear, always fear. It was always fear. It was just like, but I think that what it was that like in my head, it was like, yeah, I just don't feel like I could say no on that one. And it was just like these guys were cool, and like these guys had a lot to offer. I was like, at that time I was moving up in the drug trade a little bit, and so I just took a stroll with these guys.
Okay, so we can keep getting deeper and deeper into this, but I want to transition. What ultimately happened that snapped you out of it?
I got raided by the SWAT team, living in an apartment in La Mesa in 2008 for sales of heroin.
Fuck.
In possession of large, just
first degree felonies.
Big felonies, yeah, bad felonies, yeah. And then I had also been racking up a rap sheet all those years. So like pretty much right when I turned 18, I caught my first felony possession. And then I went into the drug treatment area. I went into the drug treatment system, or rehabilitation system, with it's called PC 1000, just a really junky. But it's cool. I mean, it's good. It's for minor offenses, felony possessions, and then
first time offender.
Yeah, and you go through it. You do their little program. You test clean for whatever amount of program, and then all of a sudden, like, they drop it off your record. You walk away with nothing. I failed that, absconded from that, and so what was happening was I just kept amassing these felonies, and I at that point I was like, you know, I knew a bail bondsman. I was able to bond out. You know, like my bond never got revoked, and so I was catching these cases and bonding out, catching a case, bonding out, and I was just like on the run, and so then I was like street dealing, and somebody like he didn't OD, but somebody fell out in front of my apartment, and in his car, and then a bypasser saw him. Mm-hmm. You know, they reported it, and the cops came and got him, and cops were like, oh, there must be something going on here, so they set out some stakes. And then they sat there and just kept arresting people coming in and out of my house. So I got 12 counts of sales.
Whoa.
In an afternoon.
How did you, like, how is that not, especially with the rap sheet and you're talking about like the 3 strikes thing, how did you avoid prison?
So that was where the drug treatment program comes into. So drug court, ultimately, like at the beginning, they offered me 15 years. They're like, we're going to give you 15 years. That's what we have on the table. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. That was my bargain. And I was like, well, I'm just not going to sign that. And my public defender was like, I agree. You know, that's a lot of years. You know.
You'd still be in prison?
I'd still be in prison.
Fuck.
2 more years.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I would have been in prison until I was like 34. And so I went back and like, you know, they offered me, what did it go do next? 12? I think it went down to 12. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that either. And then I ended up signing for 9. So I signed a 9-year prison conviction. I got convicted to go to prison for 9 years. And
so how does that work? How do they go like, hey man, we want to put you in jail for 15? You're like, nah, man. They're like, all right, we'll rethink.
Well, no, because what you have, you have an amount of time. So the DA brings a deal to you, and the DA, the people present you with a plea bargain, and you say, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, okay. And so then the people come up with another. This is your new plea bargain. The people are gonna, 10 years, and you're like, nah, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, then they come up to you and they're like, look, we're gonna give you a plea bargain for 7 years. At 60%, and if you don't sign it, then we're going to trial, and we're going to try you for the maximum.
I gotcha.
For 20 years.
Okay.
With a strike, so you're going to do 20 years at 8%. And so then you're like, where's the pen?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's kind of what happened to me. And so in that time, I think Schwarzenegger was the governor. Mm-hmm. And so they were like doing all these kinds of reforms. So I was bouncing, starting to bounce around the prison system, the California prison system, Chino, Calipatria.
So you actually went to these places?
Yeah, I went to these places.
Okay.
And anyways, I ended up getting I got an offer to do drug court, and they were like, it's not, it's a good deal. Like if you sign now, like we can get you out as a nonviolent offender tomorrow. They're like, the only stipulation is that if you fail this program, we have to give you a 2-year lid on your conviction. And so if you fail the program, then you have to serve out your conviction, and then you have to serve out an additional 2 years flat in general population.
Whoa.
No, because there's different prisons. There's,
Yeah.
And
how long were you actually in prison for before they gave you this?
Actual prison, like 9 months. Mm-hmm. In the system though, in the penal system for that stay, 19 months total.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in the county system for a while.
Right.
Because the battling, like the bouncing around, it's like if you don't sign a plea bargain, most people sign plea bargains as fast as they can, because if you don't sign the plea bargain, then you might have to wait a month. Mm-hmm. And then it's like you wait a month, you go back, you say no, then you're in jail now all of a sudden you're sitting there for 90 days.
Right. And
you go back and then you say, okay, I'll fight it. And so like if you take it to trial, you're in there for a year. And so by the time I got through,
So
I did 12 months in county. I did a year in county.
Just waiting.
Just waiting. And I got lucky,
I mean, yes, you're standing here in front of me now.
Well, no, I mean, I got lucky to go to prison.
Okay,
county sucks.
Yeah. What's the difference?
County just sucks. Like, people don't live there the same way. Like, prison has a different set of rules. It's like a different dynamic.
What was that like for you, the prison?
Scary. It's terrifying. When I left county, this guy came up to me and was like, hey, man, like, we heard you catching a bus tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, I'm going up. Yeah, I'm going to yeah, I'm going upstate. He was like, here. He like, gave me something. He gave me a package, and it was like, this package better make it wherever you're going. You know, I don't care how you get it there, but this package needs to be where you're going, and someone's gonna know you when you get there. Like they know who you are. They're waiting for you. And so you show up with this package. But he also told me you show up with that package and you got like a free ride. You're gonna be pretty set up for a little bit.
Fuck.
And so it was like
So they trap you.
you can't say no. You know, and that's just that's the scary part is that, and that's what was scary about the prison system is that, you know, being like 18, 19, all of a sudden you got these people who are impressionable, and then whatever other things in your head, you know, especially if you're thinking like, man, I'm about to do 9 years, like I better get myself established. It's like one of the first things I think you know. The other thing that's weird though is being young like that, being with like these grown ass hardened criminals.
Yeah.
Is terrifying.
Yeah.
Killers, dude. Killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, as a non-killer, right? I'm 32. The amount of authority that I can speak to just from my own personal power, right, is a lot different than what I could do at 18. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I could stand up for myself in a very different way than I could at 18, 19.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I can't even imagine when you have people who are like, no, I've killed.
Or then they get kids to kill. You know, it's just
Yeah,
crazy.
that's
Yeah. Like I have a
insane.
buddy that I grew up with, man. It's so sad. Like I remember I had Facebook. He was in Donovan, and he had this picture, and it was like a selfie, and white dude, bald head, with a swastika on his head, and I'm like, man, like I grew up with that kid. I played baseball with that kid. Fuck. You know, my buddy Brennan, and you know, he went in at 18. Went into the prison system at 18, and it's like, and now he's like a Nazi gang member, you know, or in an Aryan, you know, prison gang.
So you deliver the package.
I delivered the package. Yeah, I delivered the
But
package.
how did you avoid getting into that shit? Because I don't see any tattoos on you.
Dude, I almost got blasted up, and this old timer pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, man, like, why don't you come with me?" And he was like, he pretty much explained to me like, if I get these tattoos, that nothing in this place is free, is what he told me. He says, anything that somebody offers you. Nobody offers you anything here out of goodwill, is what he said. And, you know, he had this big, you know, he just reached out to me. He was just like, man, like, don't try to be cool. Don't try to be badass. He was like, get through this and get out. And yeah, so I started hanging out with him, you know, just hanging out with a couple guys.
Who kept to themselves.
Yeah, we just kept ourselves, and you know, like the unfortunately, like if a riot pops up, you got to step up. Like, or if something big happens, like you got to step up. But for the most part, like if you're minding your business, if you do your own thing, like you can get through pretty easy. It's not as bad as people say. It's not like they gave me the knife and made me go stab Chucky.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's not that bad. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the person who stabs Chucky is someone who took a loan. You know, if they have something over you, then they can get you.
God.
And so that's what happened to my buddy Creeper. You know, my buddy Creeper, or Travis, that I grew up with, like he was in and out of the system. I think he died 3 years ago, and he had a drug debt, and he got, you know, he was just slipping, and they killed him. You know, he couldn't pay his drug debt.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's some serious shit, dude.
Yeah. I think a year younger than me, maybe 2 years younger than me.
So you worked through this program. So you started the program 9 months into prison.
Oh well, no. So I got released. It's an outpatient program. So I got released on an OR.
What's OR?
And released on my own recognizance. So they what do they call it? So they suspended my sentence. So I got into the program as a nonviolent offender, got released on a 9-year suspended sentence, signed into drug court with a 2-year lid, and started this 18-month drug program.
Wow. And what was the program? I know you told me about it before, but no one else.
It's called drug court. And
Okay.
so it's just, it's like the last resort. It's pretty much like you go to prison or you complete this program. Yeah, and the thing that was cool about it was that my criteria, I didn't actually qualify for drug court. So,
Because it's usually first time, not repeat offenders, right?
but that one's not necessarily first time, but like the sales, like people, like sales wrecked my life. My life is still kind of wrecked because of that sales case. Like I've lost everything. I have nothing else on my record except for sales.
Okay.
I have one count of sales. And so I was able to get in that. The only stipulation being that everything would get dropped. All those pliers that I was running around with that I've been stringing along, like, would all get dropped.
It's an amazing deal.
It was. It was a great deal. And so when I got out, I was like, I'm never going to use it again. And all these guys in this bullpen were laughing at me, and they're like, you're screwed. You have no clue. You're dumb. We'll see you back here in a week. And I was like, yeah, you're wrong. I'm never going to do it again. I got out, like, hopped in some car with some dude who was getting out and, like, talked them into giving me a ride. And I went and got loaded.
Fuck.
Went
First
right back,
day.
Went right back. I found my chick. Yeah, I had, like, a fiance at the time. Went back and it was loaded. And for the next, like, 3-4 days, what was that, March? I think March 23rd to June 5th was one of the roughest, most intense drug binges of my entire life. And it ended up on, like, the Coronado Bridge, ready to I was going to jump. That was what I went. I drove up to the Coronado Bridge in a borrowed car to jump off the Coronado Bridge. And, like, went to stepped up onto the rail to jump off the bridge, and got knocked off of the bridge backwards. So back onto the bridge.
Yeah. By what?
Like a gust of wind. I don't have no clue. Something crazy happened on that bridge, though. And so then I got back in my car, and I drove back, got back and went back to the apartment, and my mom was there, chilling at my apartment, smoking cigarettes, drinking vodka out of this 7-Up 2-liter. Yeah. And she's just drinking, and she was like, why don't you just come back with me and try to get clean? And I was like, I guess that beats jumping off the Coronado Bridge. And so on June 6th, I went to this men's meeting, and I just completely jumped headfirst into recovery.
And the men's meeting was part of drug court?
No, the men's meeting was just an NA meeting, so I didn't get into drug court until the 18th.
Oh, so you had a lag time.
I had a lag time.
That's got to be the most at-risk window.
It was pretty bad.
Whoa.
It's a weird way that they have it set up. It's not like that for everybody. A lot of people get out of the county jail system. The reason I had this little window, though, was because they weren't actually sure that they could get me into the program. But they let me out on the OR.
Fuck.
And so I got out on the OR, and so my court date was on the 18th of June. And so I went into drug court. It was a Thursday. And they were like, you know what? Like, we got you. Like, you're in drug court. Like, report tomorrow to the East County Center for Change. It's like on Madison and Magnolia and El Cajon. And
I've been there. Not like...
But that area.
But as like a mental health worker at the time. When
Really?
I moved here, I was working with mental health systems. And
oh,
we would
yeah.
do outreach.
I mean, it was, yeah. So East County Center for Change.
Yeah.
That's drug court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But by the time I got into drug court, I was on board. I was like, I'm done. You know, like, I found God. I found this. Like, I gave myself straight 100% to the program. I cut off all my old ties. I moved. You know, like, I changed everything immediately because I was like, I would rather die. So the reason I was going to kill myself was I would rather die than become like my buddy I told you about with the swastika on his head. I would rather die than spend the rest of my life in and out of the prison system. I would just don't want to do it. And so I was figured that, you know...
Because your life's not your own anyway.
Exactly. And I was like, you know, I'd rather die than be a slave to heroin and to just be in the revolving door of the penal system in California.
And like even if you're in the prison system, you have your body, but you could still be a slave to other people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? People who, like you said, have one over on you.
Mm-hmm.
You're in debt to them.
Yeah.
Like the people who have free will in prison, if there is such a thing, that's a few breed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was in jail, they made me jump some guy because he took a piss at the wrong time. I was like...
Yeah. Do you want to do that?
No. It was one of the lowest points of my life. The guy wasn't all there.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah, he was mentally disadvantaged, and I didn't realize at the time. I was just scared. I was like, oh my God, like I gotta wreck this guy because I was like, everybody's watching. Like I better destroy him. They called me Tracks the Hitman because I just had track marks everywhere. I was just such a junkie. It sucked. That was bad. And so I just bombed on this guy, and all of a sudden, like there was like a spark that most people have. Like when I looked, this guy just didn't have that spark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know what
like,
you mean.
Like I looked, it was missing, and I was just like, oh. I just like went back and laid on my rack. It just was like, don't cry,
Dude.
don't cry.
Because he probably looked at you with that. It's almost like that look of like a dead it's almost dead.
I felt like I hit a child. He looked at me like a child. Like, you just hit some innocent child, and they're like, or like an animal, like a dog. And like the little dog is like, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know, he looked at me like
confused.
A puppy. Yeah, just like, why? And I was like, oh.
This hurts.
Yeah.
This hurts and you're doing it. Why? Dude.
But it was cool, man. I mean, when I got into drug court, though, I was like the only person on that page, you know.
Who was willing to commit
Who was
to
there.
it.
Yeah, I was on it. And they were like, oh, you're full of shit. Like, you're a liar. Nobody has that kind of desire. And so, like, my stay in drug court was like getting heckled, kind of like getting made fun of in court, you know. Or
you weren't supposed to make it.
I wasn't supposed to make it. Me and my buddy Daryl were talking about that. And he made it, but he failed the program, went and did a county year. He'd met his wife, and now he's got it together. He's good. He didn't fail the program because of drugs, though. He failed the program because he had some kind of an issue with his urine. Like, he was testing with too much creatine in his urine. I think he had too high of a creatine secretion, or they were coming out as dilutes. And so they were like, it was like he was drinking too much water, whatever it was, like there was something wrong. And I don't think that he was diluting his urine. You know, I think that like there was honestly like some kind of like physical, chemical issue with his urinary tract. And so like they just kept sending him back to jail. Like,
sucks, dude.
Constantly for like months at a time before they finally.
He's like, man, I should have just gotten high anyway.
No, yeah, he told him at the end, he was just like, you know what, just terminate me, like screw this. And that's what happens to a lot of people. Drug court's hard. It's like it's a lot, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned it was so structured. And how many times a week are you having touch points with people?
I mean, in the beginning, it was 5 days a week.
It's
5
a
days a
job.
week. Oh yeah, 5 days a week. What were the groups? I want to say the groups were, I think the groups were like 90-minute groups. So you have to go a 90-minute group with like 10 to 12 other people.
Shit.
There's a morning group and an evening group. You drug test almost every day. If you're in phase 1, you pretty much drug test every day. You go to court every Thursday in the East County Center for Change. Yeah, you go to court every Thursday. If you had any issue, if you missed a group, if you missed a test, if you failed a test, you went to jail on Thursday. You went to jail on Thursday, and whatever it was either like they do like 2-day sanctions, 3-day sanctions, and then from there it'd go like a week, then 2 weeks, and then usually like a month.
I mean, on some level, the state is probably sponsoring this program. So they're like, we better get our money's worth. Don't waste our time. You fuck up at any point, jail.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because you pay dues too. So you're paying, I don't know who the dues are going to. I'm sure it's MHS is running it. So you're paying 80. I can't remember. I think it was like 80 a month. I think it was like you needed a $20 money order every week. Because
that's dirt cheap to what services you're probably getting.
Exactly.
Like, it probably costs way more.
But also for the taxpayer, it's a lot cheaper to run that MHS program than it is to house all those addicts.
Of course.
You know.
Especially non-violent.
Yeah. What's sad is most of them died. Most people I went through the program with are dead.
Fuck.
Like dead serious.
From ODs.
Yeah. It was really sad. Like a lot of the people died within 2 or 3 months of having left the program, if they made it that long.
God damn.
Yeah, really, really sad.
What do you think? I have a very liberal stance on drugs, meaning that I don't believe drugs should be illegal. I believe that the government regulation is way better than government enforcement. And I would imagine that would cut out a lot of the organized crime element that, like, I don't think that if we legalized drugs, you would have had a different experience necessarily with your addiction, but you might have avoided the criminality portions of it. You might have avoided having people who were involved in selling drugs, who were probably doing other things.
Yeah.
What's your stance on it, looking back at all this crazy experiences that you've had?
I think that crime should be punished. I think that crime should be punished, whether you're under the influence or not under the influence. Like, if you commit a crime, you commit a crime. Now, one of the things that's really crazy that I think that they've done is that they're trying to help with they're trying to help with drug addiction. And so one of the things that I heard a lot of people do, and this is like the drug court thing, is that someone goes, "Oh, I'm an addict. I did this, I'm an addict." And then all of a sudden it's like, what they can do is they can try to get a crime that they committed to be kind of shelved. And then they can use these drug treatment programs to get themselves out of trouble, to get out of jail for being nonviolent. Like, oh, I did petty theft, right? Oh, I'm an addict. And people are using that. And I think that's one of the things that's really weird is I think that it needs to be completely separate. Like, you have addiction and you have crime.
Yeah, very much.
Holding drugs, what kind of a crime is that? And whose business is it? What you do on your free time?
Yeah, Mac Dre has the best quote, hands down. He goes, "I'm not hurting nobody but my body."
Right.
Like, I love that.
Yeah, no, and for real, like if I'm using drugs and I'm not hurting anybody, how are you going to make that a crime? Because you say that the probability of me committing a crime under the influence of that drug is higher than if I wasn't. You know, and it's like, that's like arresting somebody randomly. Just being like, oh yeah, we're just arresting you because, you know, the probability of you committing a crime is high. And I just don't think it makes any sense. Like, I just don't think that, like, being in possession of drugs.
Yeah, if you use those stats, then you're really screwing minorities over, right? It's like, oh, well, minorities have a higher chance of being in trouble, so we're just going to arrest you, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
but it's like,
we heard a lot about that this summer, you know,
yes.
and it's like a lot of people didn't, you know, I think that was a lot of that argument was that, like, you know, a lot of things escalated that would just not have escalated.
Yes.
They would have never stopped and talked to that person.
It's ridiculous.
Why did they talk to that person? Like,
Yeah.
why did it escalate to what it did? And it was pretty similar to that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, especially if you get treated with suspicion, then it doesn't feel good.
Well, you're combative. I don't think that locking up drug addicts is a way to. I just don't agree with it. I just don't think that it works because I think that the problem is that like you take a drug addict and like I said, you do crimes, you commit crimes. It's hard to say, you know, like there's certain crimes like I get it that you're under the influence of drugs, but like you committed a heinous crime, like
doesn't fucking matter.
Doesn't matter what you did. Doesn't matter if you're out of your mind on drugs. Like
I agree.
Not everybody who's out of their mind on drugs goes on a high-speed chase through 8 different cities after robbing a bank. Like, I knew this guy that I was in drug court with, and, like, I dropped him off at a Motel 6 one night, and this was way after drug court. This was years down the road. I was, like, driving down Adams Avenue, and he was, like, sitting on this bus stop, and I was like, oh, that's Jay. I know that guy. And he looked all jacked up, and I was like, hey, man, like, you want to, like, just hop in the car. Like, you look like you could use, like, a friend. Anyway, I ended up driving him back and dropping him off at this Motel 6 where he was staying, and he walked right across the street when I pulled away and robbed 2 banks.
What?
Yeah. It's like, that's, you fucking, what? What? Yeah, right? Like, that's crazy. Like, you should be charged.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got charged.
I agree.
But he got out within, like, I saw him, like, 3 years later.
That's insane.
He had, like, this crazy, that was a whole different podcast. He had this crazy story. He, like, found God, and he's clean now.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's, like, on point. He has, like, a family, like, a plumbing business. Like, yeah, totally flipped around. That's been within 5 years.
Dude, that's insane.
That's been within 5 years of, or maybe, like, probably, like, 6 years of having dropped him off at that Motel 6 and robbing those banks.
Dude, I think that's one of those things where it's like, I think we don't forgive people enough. Because the amount of change that you can really have in 5 years, and again, not excusing crime, hurting property, hurting other people, inexcusable.
Oh, yeah.
We just live in a society where you just don't need to do that.
No.
You don't need to do that.
Especially in California, like, there's food everywhere.
There's food. There's
like housing.
Shelter. Yeah. There's just so many resources.
It's like if you want to be on the streets, you have to choose kind of be on the streets.
Yeah,
like there's so many things in place in California to get you food, to get you housing.
Right. Excluding like mental illness, you can be so out of your gourd just being mentally ill. But
well, that's most of it. That's most of the homeless population, yeah.
But like it's crazy how much people can change if given the right opportunities.
Oh yeah.
And some people squander their opportunities. You clearly didn't. How many people would you say made it through drug court?
I mean,
you probably had a cohort of people that you saw regularly.
I think quite a few people make it through drug court. I think it's just that not a whole lot of people make it out of drug court. You know what I mean? So it's like they make it through the program. Like you can cheat your way through that system pretty easily. The problem is like the amount of people who actually recover coming out of that program and don't go back into the same way of living that they did. And that's I don't know. I mean, it was really low.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of good things came out of that program, which is what's sad.
Yeah. For you, it
For me, it was great. You know, I've met
you
a
also
handful.
you also cut off a bunch of friends and social ties, which I think is such an important facet of recovery.
Oh yeah, I left. I mean, I moved down into the hood. Where was I? Well, I'd been bouncing around like Spring Valley-ish area in the end of my addiction, and so I moved down into Sherman, like into Logan, in the barrio, and yeah, just I had no phone, no nothing, completely started new.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if anybody ever listens to this, it's like if you're dealing with something like that, it's like immediately get rid of your friends.
Oh, immediately.
Get rid of your social group.
It's not worth it.
Like,
and I wish I would have known that because I would have gotten rid of my fiance. You know, because I kept her. I mean, we kept playing around for a while.
Yeah.
But.
And then, I mean, she died, right?
She died. Yeah, she OD'd. Oh, same thing. OD'd.
Jeez.
Like a day out of jail, OD'd. And that's what you see a lot. I mean, that's like most of my friends. Like now that like I have some ties back to those old friends, you know, it's like so the people that I was hanging out with now, like we're talking about like the white home girl. You know, I say the white home because I'm talking like imagine like this beautiful little blonde white chick in suburbia. You know, you're like, who is it? It's just prostitute, HIV positive, hepatitis C, you know, MRSA.
What's that?
It's flesh-eating virus, pretty much. It's staph infection, but it's like systemic staph, and so it's like it turns into flesh-eating bacteria. You get all these horrible, nasty. It's terrible. Ugh. I mean, name it. I mean, and on top of that, all of this in Tijuana. You know, almost every woman that I knew in addiction, and when I was dealing, all the women that I knew in addiction were prostituting. And now that I've been clean, all the women that were just using or whatever, like every single woman that I know that is in addiction from when I was using and growing up is a prostitute now. You know,
it's amazing they're still alive.
Yeah, it's amazing.
If they are.
Yeah. And all the guys, I mean, and the other constants, we all had hepatitis C. Everybody got hepatitis C. It's just rampant.
Do you get cured of that, or is that?
Yeah, I did it. I did a treatment for it.
Oh, so you had it too?
I did have it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's like liver damage, right? Like
over a longer period of time, but it's really bad if you get hepatitis C with HIV. It's a pretty big deal once you have the two together because it just causes this insane,
systemic
just this rapid viral count progression on both ends.
Whoa.
You know, because you're having like immune system just meltdown.
And that's from sharing needles, right? Yeah.
And I mean, I guess from sex. I mean, HIV definitely from sex. Hepatitis C much more. It's not really considered a sexually transmitted disease, but it is transmitted.
Yeah.
It can be transmitted sexually.
And you said all the guys, they all had hepatitis C.
Everyone has hepatitis C. All the drug community. I mean, everybody has hep C. And then now it's like you have this fentanyl thing going on. You know, me and my buddy were like, my buddy Daryl, the guy I went to drug court with, we're best friends. I was like the best man at his wedding. We went to Canada Steakburger yesterday. We were like out there and we saw some billboards, like this billboard talking about like fentanyl, San Diego's silent killer. You know, and so it's hot right now. It's bad, you know, with the pandemic, you know.
It's gotta be so rough.
Oh, they said it just skyrocketed. Addiction, relapse, drug abuse, suicide, like everything is like through the roof. And so, you know, back to like is it a criminal issue or is it a mental health issue? I think that it's more of a mental health issue.
Yeah, I
agree. I don't think the prison system's going to solve anything but just it's going to make people violent drug addicts.
Yes.
Or criminal drug addicts. That's what happened when I first went to jail. When I went as a minor for a DUI, all I did was meet more criminals.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think one of the things with COVID is that we've been so focused on the COVID deaths. I don't think we have any clue of like just how much damage the lockdowns have done to people like that who have been ODing, doing drugs, domestic violence. I think that has been obviously overlooked in the information that most people have access to.
Oh, yeah.
And unless you're actually a part of that discussion or you're looking for that information, I don't think that that's top of mind.
Yeah, or what are we going to find? I think what's really interesting that we can look at, what I think that they will look at, is not just about like what's happening to addicts, But what's happening to the normal people? Because there's a lot of normal people. And see, the thing about addiction, or especially with like alcohol, if you look at alcohol as a drug, if it is used in that way, it can definitely be a drug.
Yes.
And so when people are using this time and stressed and trying to cope with what's been happening, in learning how to abuse alcohol alcoholically, or starting to learn to abuse certain drugs addictively, then when we transition back, what we're going to find is like what is going to be going on with all of the chemical dependence in our country.
You're right.
Because it is going to be intense.
I remember, dude, 2000, it must have been like 2005, 2006 is when I started becoming aware of Happy Valley. That's what we called it. And that's the pill boom.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And from like 2006 through, until I got out of that lifestyle, so many of my high school peers were stealing meds from their parents.
Oh, yeah.
And then once we got out of high school, so many transitioned to heroin.
That's how I built what I had. It was like I built it out as a middleman initially for like, I knew these guys who robbed a pharmacy. Like they robbed a pharmacy. Maybe they might have been robbing pharmacies. Like these guys were pretty gangster with it. And like they were robbing pharmacies, and they were funneling these like large quantities to me as a middleman. And then when the legislation went through to try to combat and stop OxyContin abuse, they put those time release things. They started making it more and more difficult to abuse. They started making it more and more difficult to get.
You just pop more.
So what happened was, they cut it off. And so people just weren't able to get the amount that they needed anymore. And so that's exactly what happened. Everyone.
And then now people have fentanyl. So, this is just stronger.
Well, they all went to heroin.
That's true. That's it.
And they just.
It's cheaper.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot cheaper, and it's.
I think it's better.
That's what the people say. I don't know. I've never.
But that was always my thing. Like I never went through the pills. I would do them.
Yeah.
That's a joke, right? My drug of choice is more. What do you do? What you got?
Yeah, that's such a dangerous mindset. I remember I told myself early on, whenever I started getting involved with stuff, was that I would never do what I called the big three, and that was meth, heroin, and crack. I would never touch those things, period. And I never did. Never saw it, never touched it. And I think having that rule for myself probably saved me.
Oh yeah.
Because I could have had access to it.
It's everywhere.
I had access to it, and I chose to not.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what my life would be if I had gone down that path.
Oh man, you probably have a felony.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd be carrying a felony around,
right.
and who knows career wise. My mom made me promise not to smoke crack and not to join a gang. I never joined a gang, but I did smoke crack.
I don't know why that's funny. Like the way you said it,
I did smoke crack. Yeah, a lot.
Well, dude, we've been talking for a while. I think, obviously, you have tons of stories, and I'd love to hear more of them. And, I want to share my stories too, because I wanted to focus on you and listen to your story a little bit.
Yeah, do another one.
Obviously, this is one time. So, dude, Josh, thanks for just swinging by and having a chat. Let's, you're planning to come to Colt Valley, Boulder, Saturday?
Yeah, I think so.
Hell yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's do it, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet.
Cool.